Welcome to On the Water and in the Field, Cornell Cooperative Extension Marine Program's news magazine show. I'm your host, Kimberly Barber, and we're at Strong's Water Club. On today's show, we're going to get an update on the status of efforts to establish a local kelp industry here on Long Island. We'll then head out in the field to learn about an important study underway to help figure out why we are experiencing population die-offs of local bay scallops. Next, we'll check out a new community-based oyster restoration initiative that was recently kicked off by our Western Suffolk Aquaculture team. Next up, we will see how the Permeable Reactive Barrier pilot project that our Groundwater team is working on is going. Along the way, we will check in with our partners at Strong's Marine to learn about our Back to the Bays collaboration and have the opportunity to introduce you to our new Executive Director, Vanessa Lockel. So hang on, and here we go. CCE Marine Program has been involved in efforts to help establish a local kelp industry on Long Island for years now. Our latest collaboration with Lazy Point Farms is helping further advance these efforts. Let's find out how.
Sugar kelp has been an emerging specialty crop in the past few years across the Northeast and now on Long Island. This crop has enormous potential in local seafood markets, and its potential also includes other uses such as fertilizer, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, and it also cleans the water, removing excess nutrients and carbon dioxide. The Moore family has taken notice of that potential and created a not-for-profit called Lazy Point Farms to provide structural, educational, and logistical support needed to advance the future of sugar kelp farming on Long Island.
This was a project that Cornell was involved, and I specifically was involved in advising for New York State DEC. And during the harvest portion of that project of the sugar kelp that had been grown 2 years ago, the Moores came out and were given some of the sample kelp harvested to try their hand at processing and just being able to work with the kelp to figure out the best way that it could be used in a commercial setting. From that, the Moores knew my involvement and my expertise with seaweed and with the kelp aquaculture, so they reached out to Cornell and we began a partnership. The Moore Family Charitable Foundation is the funding agent, but Lazy Point Farms is an offshoot that was specifically created to manage this new project.
So Lazy Point Farms is basically one of the projects as part of the nonprofit that we started. And when we first got involved in the sort of kelp project, we were really focused on the Peconic because it seemed like a lot of potential for the future for where kelp can be grown right around the Lazy Point area. But as we started to learn, we have seen that there's a lot of different areas around Long Island. And so Lazy Point Farms is now just focused on, helping to build up the kelp industry across Long Island. And that's, the cultivation, creating seed schools to help, to get the farmers so they can locally source the seeds. There's, many different growers we support, on the North Shore as well as the South Shore of Long Island, not just in the Peconic Bay and Lazy Point area. And we've seen in other areas that this can be a self-sustaining industry.
Kelp to me is one of the coolest things you can possibly grow. It's from the minute you start to grow it, it's already giving back to everything that's around it. It takes in excess nutrients. It's providing a habitat for local sea life around it. Improves water quality, all these things. And as it grows and grows, it's taking in carbon. It's doing all these amazing things, and then you harvest it and there's so many different things you can do with it. It's incredibly versatile and it doesn't even ask for anything in return.
Having worked with kelp aquaculture before, Cornell back in 2016, 2017 had completed a sugar kelp feasibility study in the Peconic estuary. So we've had experience with deploying kelp and dealing with kelp seed strings. I was also familiar with the process of actually setting up nurseries, and I was brought on board to not only act as an advisor and to actually produce some seed strings for the project, but also to train what is now the first commercial kelp nursery operation in New York State with the Hart Lobster hatchery.
We started looking into kelp about 3 years ago to start growing as a renewable resource. We needed a winter project for the shop. And then Wendy reached out to us to start growing as a nursery so that we could grow the spores for use by all the farmers. And then we've remained in constant contact to make sure that we have a successful year last year and then as a continuing project for future years. So my role in the project is to help release the spores and get them set onto the spools that have all the string on it that then gets laid out. And then we also run a line in our basin to grow the kelp over winter.
It's not something that we necessarily looked for. It kind of came to us. The notion of growing kelp in the Northeast and its apparent success in further northeast off of Maine and so on in the cooler waters, the deeper waters, was very intriguing. And when we had an opportunity to have or to at least participate in a kelp pilot project, we jumped at it, thinking that would be a great way to kind of expand our operations, maximize and diversify our acreage out there. And it's also a winter product, so when the oyster harvest and clam harvest is, at least when the market is down, and the maintenance is kind of at a low point as well for the year, to have kelp keep us active, it sounds like a very reasonable thing to at least look into.
The people I worked with, really professional, really interested and invested in doing a good job, producing a good product, even though it was something that they're used to growing shellfish. This is kind of outside their wheelhouse, but they really took to it. And a lot of the growers, they came, there was a solicitation for people to be involved in the project, but a lot of these growers came to Lazy Point Farms and really requested to be part of the project and have requested to be part of any future projects with it as well. So I just think the enthusiasm around the project, everybody has a real vested interest in making seaweed aquaculture work in New York.
Thank you, Lazy Point Farms, for everything you are doing to support the advancement of kelp aquaculture on Long Island. We look forward to continuing to be part of this important work. From kelp onto bay scallops, our research and restoration efforts in support of local bay scallops is now as important as ever. Let's head out with Dr. Steve Tettleback to learn more about what he and his team are up to.
For the third year in a row, things are not looking good for our local bay scallops. You've seen the headlines, you've heard the rumors, and maybe learned a bit about the theories surrounding what's going on. And unfortunately, none of it's positive. Several factors are weighing into the bay scallop die-off, mainly rising water temperatures, disease, and predation from cow-nose rays. Numerous efforts by local researchers are currently underway to gather data and pinpoint what's going on. At CCE, we are specifically targeting our research to try to determine if temperature and timing of spawning are attributing to the population decline, and to what degree. Dr. Steve Tettleback, along with his team, have set up a network of 7 sites throughout the Peconic Estuary, consisting of 8 bags of scallops.
This is our bi-weekly sampling of one of our 7 field sites in the Peconic Bays where we're monitoring bay scallop population health. So these cages have been out since somewhere around the beginning of May, middle of May or so. And we wanted to make sure we got them out before they started spawning. So the scallops that we stocked into here are hatchery reared scallops. They came from the longline system up in Orient Harbor. And the reason for that is that we weren't sure we'd have enough animals from the natural populations to be able to sample all through the season. If the die-off happened, which it has at most sites, then we knew that we'd have a better chance of getting the animals we needed to if we stocked hatchery-reared scallops. So they all came from the same source. They all started out at the same point in the spawning cycle. But what we've seen, actually, is what we've expected based on prior work we've done, is that the spawning cycles of scallops in the 7 different areas in the Peconic Bays are actually different based on water temperature and other factors, food levels perhaps. So being able to monitor reproductive condition every 2 weeks at each of the 7 sites, we really are able to fine-tune focus on factors that may be responsible for the mortality. In 2 more weeks, something we do every month, we also collect animals for disease diagnostics, which are brought to Stony Brook. Dr. Bassam Alam's lab will look at the prevalence of the disease or parasite that is partly responsible for the die-off of the scallops. And then we'll also do surveys of the natural populations to see how they are faring in the context of very warm temperatures again this year. And also we believe that spawning of scallops is contributing to that physiological stress that may tip them over the edge and cause them to die. So that's why we're monitoring reproduction every 2 weeks. So we have an idea of, okay, when does spawning occur? How does that align with water temperature, dissolved oxygen levels, and parasite load? And then when is the signature of the mortality events occurring? So this is a temperature salinity monitor. Monitors them every 15 minutes. And this would certainly be able to last through the middle of October when we complete the study, but bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. So we want to make sure that we have this data because we've already seen large mortality. So we want to be able to look at the environmental factors and say, okay, was there a critical increase in temperature around the time they spawn? So this data set is golden. So in looking at all those things together, we're hoping to be able to better understand what's driving these mass die-offs of bay scallops.
Thanks, Steve, Scott, and the whole Scallop Restoration Project team for your dedication to our local bay scallops. Hopefully, all this great research will help efforts to bring back this species. In other shellfish news, our Western Suffolk Aquaculture team recently kicked off a new community-based program that resulted in shellfish replenishment activities to benefit Northport Harbor. Let's head out there and learn more.
This is a great project that Trustee Mercy Smith started, and it's now coming to fruition, but through a lot of help. Through the county, through Doc Spencer's office, the Huntington Town Board, the Harbor Master's office, and the Northport Chamber of Commerce, and the John Engman Theater is an example of local businesses that have stepped up and really helped this project come to fruition. And especially the support that was able to be brought in by all the residents, because that's where, that's the groundswell that was needed to support all these different municipalities and organizations to make this happen with Cornell Cooperative Extension.
When I first joined Northport Village as a trustee, I was asked to chair the 125th Anniversary Committee. And when a collaboration of individuals, including businesses, residents, not-for-profits, all these folks came together, and we had about 35 individuals that joined the committee to celebrate back in 2019. Those individuals decided that they actually didn't want to be party planners. They actually wanted to create some type of way to give back that would not only give back in an immediate sense, but give back for generations to come. They wanted to reestablish the shellfish population, and they wanted to provide awareness and an opportunity to educate not only residents in the community, but our children. And those were really the 3 primary goals. And to really restore Northport Harbor to its natural state of wellness.
She had actually connected with the Director of Maritime Services for Huntington because she was interested in trying to create some programs that were giving back to Northport and helping to clean the water. And through their conversation somehow, he told her about the Shellfish Grow-Out program that we had at Huntington. He got the 2 of us together. We had a meeting at Northport Village Hall with my supervisor, Matt Sclafani, Mercy, the Maritime Director, and we kind of talked about hearing her what she was interested in doing and what we had the capabilities of doing. And so what we ended up deciding was that we would create a similar program where we would bring flupsies to Northport and raise shellfish there, hire some high school students that were local, as well as trying to hire someone to run the program that I would teach and train to also be from Northport, trying to keep everything part of the village program.
So I reached out to Supervisor Chad Lupinacci at the time and his team, and Mayor Damon McMullen and I met with their team, and they actually recommended that we coordinate with Barry from Cornell, and we were able to come up with a plan to replicate what they do at Gold Star here at Northport.
The FLUPSI is actually an acronym for a floating upweller system. And what that means is water is being drawn up through the bottom of these FLUPSI boxes. And at the bottom of those boxes, the shellfish, that's where the shellfish sit, and there's different size mesh on the bottom. So water is actually sucked up through the bottom of those and out through the top. The water then pours into the central trough that has an ice eater motor in it that's pushing water out of the trough. So that's what's creating the vacuum lift. And the idea of that is water filled with nutrients and algae is constantly being pulled over the shellfish, and it's allowing them to feed as their filter feeders. So they're cleaning the water, pulling out the algae, and that's what allows them to grow a little faster than they would if they were in nature.
It's just great every day coming down here, right? The standout thing was the support it got from the town. Maybe that might be a little bit corny, but everybody was so interested in doing it. They were supportive. The highway department, anytime I had any problem, they were down here in a second to help us out. Everybody always had questions. We had a Saturday where, again, the Northport Native Guard, they helped raising money for the docks to bring it in. So anybody who donated was able to come down and ask questions. So we put up the tent one Saturday to have people, kind of like an open house for people to come down. But just the enthusiasm everybody had for it.
The reasons why I'm really excited about this project is because there's so many different facets, whether it's the educational part or the Bayman's harvesting part, or whether it's the clean water part. It's just a program that offers so much variety, and it's so good for the community. We should all get behind it.
What I think is most important is connecting with various villages or other not-for-profit organizations, or even community members, like targeting, working with yacht clubs and stuff like that. If we have the means to provide the mechanisms for people to be out there helping, well, now we can be doing a lot more as a big group, as getting all these different communities involved. Now we can really start making a bigger difference. So I think it's really all about these additional connections and fostering these relationships that will help in the future of expanding things and trying to improve everything that we can as best to our ability.
We all live and work and play on this harbor, and it's our responsibility to care for it and take care of it and ensure that it's here for generations to come.
Community engagement and partnerships are core to our mission and ability to carry out successful restoration efforts. Great work, Barry, and special thank you to Mercy Smith and all of the supporters and partners of this project. Shellfish help filter our waters, which is important to water quality improvement efforts, but there's a lot that can also be done in and near shore to treat our waters before it even reaches our bays. Permeable reactive barriers hold a lot of promise in being an effective part of the overall goal of achieving measurable results in nutrient reduction. Our groundwater team will explain more in this next story.
We have a groundwater treatment system installed at this site. It's called a Permeable Reactive Barrier, or PRB. And it's a subsurface treatment, so there's no above ground structures after it's installed. And it's completely passive, so it requires no external energy input, and it relies on microbes that exist naturally in the soil and in the water. And this treatment is converting nitrate in the water, in the groundwater, to nitrogen gas. So that's happening naturally via microbial respiration and metabolism, and nitrogen gas is completely harmless. It makes up 80% of our atmosphere. So with this treatment, we're converting nitrate, which is a nutrient and in excess is a pollutant. We're converting that all the way to nitrogen gas and completely removing it from the water.
Well, as we're all too aware these days, that our surface waters, are impacted specifically by nitrogen. And excessive nitrogen is coming in from on land, from a variety of sources, and all of that goes into the groundwater, and all of that discharges right offshore here and brings all the, whatever happened in there winds up out there. And so that excessive nitrogen is what's causing these algal blooms, excessive algal blooms. It's also causing changes in even pH and other things that are important to the biota out there. Dissolved oxygen gets impacted, all that algae dies and sucks the air out. So nobody really is aware all the time of groundwater discharge. It's probably the leading input of nitrogen getting into these bays.
So we've been studying this system for a while now. First studying it as a small treatment cell, and that treatment cell worked really well. We published some results on that in Ecological Engineering journal, and that's available for anyone who's interested in reading that. And so then after we installed the full 100-foot barrier, we've had about a year to monitor that. We've been monitoring it seasonally, and so far the results are really promising. We've seen that in the inland groundwater, there's about 1 to 7 milligrams per liter of nitrogen, and then in the effluent, the treated water, there's 0.1 milligrams. So overall, on average, there's like a greater than 90% removal efficiency. So we're really excited about these results. And what's going on here is that we have the permeable reactive media, which is wood chips and a gravel mixture. And the wood chips are slowly being consumed over time by microbes, and the gravel actually increases the permeability of the media, so water is attracted to the barrier. So we're really maximizing the amount of groundwater flow and the groundwater treatment that's possible with this PRB.
And what makes our work unique in Cornell is that we have the ability with expertise of personnel and equipment that enables us to be able to map out and measure not only what's in that water discharging, but the rate of discharge. And that's important because all the shoreline is not the same. Some areas, like this one, have a lot of nutrients coming through, nitrogen, as well as high discharge rates. And we were able to quantify that, taking that information and using it for remedies.
There's a lot of water quality initiatives going on, as you know, and we see PRBs as a tool in the toolbox that are complementary to all of the other water quality improvements that are ongoing, like improved septic systems, improved fertilization practices, and living shorelines. All of these other types of things that are being used to improve water quality are really important, and PRBs are complementary to that. They can be used alongside those types of treatment to help provide immediate water quality relief and to help meet nitrogen load reduction targets.
We put in a small little permeable reactive barrier of wood chips basically behind a section of the bulkhead. And at the same time, that was about 2015, at the same time, we were fortunate to hook up with Molly and Stony Brook to help do some research on that. And so it enabled us to have a pilot that we put in on our own expense in Stony Brook. There was a Professor Nils Volkenborn we worked with very closely, and Molly was a PhD student under him. So that all came out of that, and that led to us taking that information and going to the Community Preservation Fund in Southampton and applying to put a 100-foot long PRB in based on what we already had piloted, and we were successful in getting that grant. And we've been monitoring it, and we partnered again with the Clean Water Institute and Nils Volkenborn. Stony Brook is helping us to do some of the monitoring and continued monitoring and research.
Independent researchers have found that PRBs can last for decades, even more than 30 years, some studies suggest, and Although PRBs do require a significant amount of money up front because we need to characterize the site to make sure the site is appropriate, and we need to install the PRB. Those are significant costs up front, but because they last so long and they really require no maintenance after installation, they become very cost effective. PRBs are mentioned in the Suffolk County Subwatershed Plan as being cost effective, similar to other nitrogen reduction technologies. So we think that, yeah, for these reasons, they're a really promising technology to continue working on and studying, and to continue to improve the installation methods so that they are more cost effective and more efficient.
It's treating nitrogen, that's atmospheric deposition, that's fertilizer, that's legacy, that's septic, and it's treating it right before it discharges. So you're getting an immediate relief in that area, kind of a triage until all the other things, good things hopefully happening inland, are go into effect. So it's filling that gap before we can do better things with our land use inland. You know, we can get some relief. So that makes it a little unique. That's something we can do now, and that we've actually expanded it now to other areas of Long Island. We got a similar work now in Sagaponack, Georgica Pond, Accabonac Harbor, Shirley. So it's expanded rapidly with our ability to evaluate, assess, and remediate.
Those are some impressive results. Thank you to the Town of Southampton Community Preservation Fund, the Hampton Hills Property Association, Molly, Ron, and all the CCE and Stony Brook University personnel involved in this project. We look forward to the future of PRBs and learning more about the various other projects that are in the works. We've been hosting our show from the beautiful grounds of Strong's Water Club here in Mattituck. We have a long history of collaboration with Strong's and some exciting things in store for the future. Let's check in with Jeff Strong to learn more.
We've had a great relationship with Cornell Cooperative Extension since the mid-90s, starting back at our original Bay location in Mattituck also. And one of the things that's been so terrific about our relationship is, in that particular one, our first venture was a low-sill bulkhead, and there was no such thing as a low-sill bulkhead in the country at the time. And with Cornell's help and an engineer out of Glen Cove, we were able to take a commercial need at our Bay location, come up with this low-sill bulkhead solution, and we were over to quadruple the amount of wetlands there. And that was over 20 years ago now, and still vibrant, and has been replicated many, many times, not just in the Northeast, but around the entire country. So we are really excited to be able to host 10 Flupsies in the water at our Strong's Yacht Center facility here on Long Island Sound, Mattituck Inlet. Thankfully, it was funded by the New York State Long Island Shellfish Restoration Project. And that growth out there has just been absolutely incredible. Over the last several years, it's produced over 10 million clams to be grown out. The success has just been absolutely incredible, and based on that success, we've committed to a 10-year program to continue with those Flupsies and the clam grow out program. We're just super excited and happy to be able to further our commitment with Cornell.
In the last few years, we've supported Cornell through our partnership with the Sound of Summer concert series, where we had the Cornell team here spreading awareness with our clients and helping us raise funds for the Back to the Bays partnership. We've also hosted our Mattituck Madness fishing tournament the last few years. With that, we also had the partnership with the Fish Initiative to encourage our clients and participants to choose local fish. This summer, we kicked off a more formal partnership, and we had the Cornell camp here. The educational team was here teaching all of our clients' children, our pool members, our visiting transient boaters. We had different workshops throughout the summer and a little mini camp that we engaged all of our little friends that got to learn more about the local waterways here and all the species that live in it.
We are equally excited about partnering with Cornell on some programs outside of Mattituck Inlet. And the core of that is establishment or further establishment of oyster reefs. And then the second piece of that is expanding the natural eelgrass beds. With both of those in place, it has a great growth factor for local small finfish, seahorses, other habitat that are all just great for the environment. We love engaging our clients in the grassroots part of what's about our business. You know, people see us selling boats and servicing boats and so on and so forth, but ultimately why we do what we do is because we love the water. And when we can engage our clients, they love the water. That's why they are with Strong's Marine and hopefully owning or renting a boat.
Through our partnership with Cornell, we were able to engage one of our clients, Bob Brule, with the Marilyn Lichtman Foundation. They made a $50,000 donation, and through that grant, it'll go on to support the hatchery team, the field team, the habitat team, so they can help us replenish the Mattatuck Inlet and plant these eelgrass plantings, restore an oyster reef, and we'll really focus all these funds on the Back to the Base stewardship site here in Mattatuck Inlet, sponsored by Strong's Marine.
We don't have a business if we don't have clean waters. So our motivation, and thankfully our customers are also bought into that. We live right here on the inlet. We're swimming with my grandkids here, and having clean water is near and dear to us. So that's what's underneath and driving our commitment, has been since the 90s, and now will continue on for the next 10 years.
Thank you, Jeff, Kelsey, and all the Strong's personnel who we've been working with to advance our shellfish restoration goals. We look forward to officially kicking off our Back to the Bays collaboration in 2022. Now last, but certainly not least, we wanted to take a few minutes to introduce you to our amazing new Executive Director, Vanessa Lockel.
Well, I'd love to say there was a roadmap, but there really wasn't. It was just a hodgepodge of many experiences throughout my life that kind of got me here. I'm first generation American. My background is Colombian, and so I was the first one to speak English, the representative of my family. So it was always this need to want to support vulnerable people or provide a voice for them. So throughout my career, a lot of what I've been focusing on has been government relations and community relations. Through that work, I was able to work at the state controller's office. I worked for the governor's office for a bit, and during a very devastating time when Long Island was hit by Sandy, I was designated as the Suffolk County Regional Representative in charge of the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery. Through that experience, I became somewhat of an advocate for Long Island and the needs of what Long Island needed versus other parts of the state. And through that, I became the Suffolk lead for the governor in general. And when we saw this wonderful opportunity, at Cornell Cooperative Extension, it was just such a great fit. It was presented to me as an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. And then COVID happened, and it was like forcing us to think even more outside the box. To some degree, it created an even better environment, because there were no rules. There was nothing that people were gonna say, that's not right. It's like, I don't know, let's try. One of the things that COVID just showed us was that we can't totally freak out. And that's hard, because it's such a difficult time, but you have to stay calm. Every day it was changing. So it's like, by the time you were freaking out about one thing, before the end of the day, you might have had to freak out about something else. So it was important to stay level-headed, balanced in our overall long-term goals, but at the same time it was important to be very conservative, really check in with our staff. And so it's not about just checking in on the outside and making sure everybody outside is okay. It's also like, how are employees doing? In the world of marine, things were shut down. It was an unknown world. Were we allowed to provide support for our services? Was our programming allowed to run? How are we going to pivot everything to provide that need? It was very important to check in with everybody and then check in with our stakeholders. What were they needing during this difficult time? And sometimes it was things like making sure our fishermen had access to the vaccine or just had access to the information. That local flavor, all that stuff that I've been saying about advocacy for Long Island and really being a part of the region, I think that's what I was so engaged by and so interested by, the applied work that we do and how it impacts at that very local level. There are so many areas for expansion for marine. When it comes to shoreline restoration, we discovered after Sandy how important it is for us to afford fortify our shoreline. Projects like working with eelgrass and rib mussels, as well as things like bulkheading, PRB bulkheading. All of these projects are really essential for our municipalities to become informed about and to invest in, because it really does protect their residents and the shoreline. In addition, for shellfish restoration, all of this food is not just a staple for our area. It also helps to clean our waters and our waterways. I think it's very important, and I think our local governments understand that. They've put pools of funding together to support this type of work. A lot to come for marine. I'm very excited. The funding is also there. We just have to go get it. And so with that, hopefully we'll be talking a lot new great things for marine next year.
We're lucky to have Vanessa leading the charge and elevating our organization. We're looking forward to more good things on the horizon, and of course we'll feature them in future episodes of our show. That does it for today though, so see you next time on the water and in the field.